believe we are live now. I still got our countdown going, but I believe we are live now. Welcome to another one of our Courage sessions as part of the Texas Health Education Service. This is a weird application cycle, and so we are here to help you interpret and walk you through some of the changing guidelines, updates that have been happening, and addressing any questions that you have, not just for this entry year, but for any future application cycle. So with me today, as always, is Dr. Beck.
Hello, good afternoon.
Could you introduce yourself to those who are maybe tuning in for the first time?
Sure. I'm Deborah Beck. I'm the advising coordinator. And I'm the former director of health profession advising at the University of North Texas.
And we're so excited to have Dr. Beck on our team. She brings such a wealth of knowledge for advising, and part of the goals here with the Texas Health Education Service is that we are able to provide sufficient support for all of our advisors so that they can better support their students as well. And I'm Enrique Hasso. I'm the Associate Director of the Texas Health Education Service and also the host of the podcast. So I noticed that we're having some trouble playing the video. Hopefully that doesn't cause too many issues. I believe we will keep moving forward with that. So yeah, we have a few things that we'd like to discuss today, particularly about the changes that have been going on at TMDSAS. As you all know, we do have constant contact with all of the member institutions that are a part of TMDSAS. It is such a well-established group that at this point, when we face issues like COVID-19, we're able to tackle that together as an organization and as several different independent institutions. And that's something that really makes TMDSAS unique. Let's see. If anybody's seeing that you have issues with the video on your end, please let me know. I'm seeing that we do have issues on our end, but we'll continue pushing forward nonetheless. And so part of the updates that have been going on as part of TMDSAS have been shared via the COVID-19 newsroom on the Texas Health Education Service website. And so we're going to go ahead and walk through a few of those new rules that have been established for entry year 2021. And for anybody who may not be applying this application cycle, but perhaps maybe applying in a future application cycle, all of these regulations, they do have specific dates that we'll go over. And we want to make sure that you are able to interpret these for your own journey. So if you have any questions about what that looks like for maybe not just an applicant for this application cycle, but for a future one, please do let us know, and we're happy to address your questions here in the chat. We have a few people here joining us. Thank you. Hello, hello. Glad to see you. All right, let's share this Google page. All right, it's asking me for all of these security settings to go through the computer. All right. But yeah, we're really excited to have address any questions that you all have about this application cycle. Right now, we do want to go over the application timeline on our end. And the updates that are going on for COVID-19. All right. Deb, are you able to see my screen there?
Yes.
Great. So here we have the Texas Health Education Service main website. And on the top, we have the direct link to the COVID-19 impacts newsroom. And so in this newsroom, we've been updating it regularly based off of feedback that we get from our member institutions and any changes that have been going on following these meetings. And so when we scroll down here, first we have any impacts that are affect all of the TMDSAS member institutions. So first off, as many of you all know, the application deadline has been pushed back until October 30th, 2020. And then for entry year 2021, TMDSAS will not begin transmitting applications to the schools until June 1st. And this is something that's new for TMDSAS, since we usually start transmitting as soon as your applications are processed. And so please use the time that is allotted here for you in May to make sure that you have your test dates scheduled. I know the MCAT registration just went live, I believe last week, and there were some issues with it, but hopefully everybody's been able to get one test date that they've been able to register for. I know that was a little difficult, so please continue pushing for that. I believe DAT is also getting some additional support for applicants there, and the GRE, as you all know, has been moved, I believe, to an online format, and so there should be minimal impacts for all of our veterinary applicants who require the GRE. The Texas A&M College of Veterinary Medicine has a deadline that they have set of September 15th. So if you are a veterinary applicant and you want to get your application in for Texas A&M, make sure you abide by that deadline. Now, starting next year, we are also expecting to have the Texas Tech University College of Veterinary Medicine joining us as well here at TMDSAS. So that will make for 2 veterinary schools in Texas, and they will both be a part of TMDSAS. We're very excited for that. The Texas Tech College of Veterinary Medicine has not yet indicated whether they will abide by the September 15th deadline, but you do want to make sure to have your application in by the TMDSAS deadline in order to have your application ready for by the time that the Texas Tech Veterinary School joins TMDSAS. We're expecting it to happen in the fall, but right now with how things are changing and things are getting delayed, we just want to make sure that you make sufficient time to get your application in for all of our veterinary applicants who are interested in the Texas Tech School, the newest school in Texas for veterinary medicine. The deadline for test scores and letters of evaluation will be extended until November 13th. That is 2 weeks after the application deadline. For our transcripts, which is the other supporting document that you submit after you apply to TMDSAS, those will not be submitted until they are prompted to be sent in by TMDSAS. This is something that's new for this application cycle. So if you do submit your transcripts without them being prompted by TMDSAS, that could cause a delay in your application. So please wait until TMDSAS asks for those transcripts. That will likely be this fall. It won't take place until then. And also don't forget that you can submit your TMDSAS application without having your test scores, without having your letters in. So please take advantage of that, get your applications in, and allow the maximum amount of time for the schools to take a look at those. Again, this is a weird year, but we want to make sure that you have the best experience in getting through to the schools. Walking through the application timeline for EY 2021, we see that we are past the application opening on May 1st. June 1st, we have our first applications that will be transmitted to the schools. And then we'll continue through the summer working with everybody who is submitting their TMDSAS application. Our early decision program deadline is currently still August 1st, although the schools are exploring to see if there are any updates on that. If there are, we will update you on the newsroom. For September 15th, early decision program results are announced. And again, that's also the deadline for the Texas A&M College of Veterinary Medicine. On October 15th, the medical schools will begin extending offers of acceptance to our out-of-state students. And also that's the date that the medical schools can begin extending pre-match offers to all of our Texas resident medical applicants. The deadline for the application for dental and medical applicants is October 30th at 5 p.m. Central Time. At 5:01 promptly, the application will shut down and you are not able to submit afterwards. So use this time, maximize the amount of time that you have available right now to submit your application. On November 13th, again, your test scores and letters of evaluation have to be submitted to TMDSAS. December 1st, this is a national date when all of the dental schools can begin extending offers of admission. Our veterinary school interviews will happen in early January. And then pre-match offer period will end at the end of January. So January 31st is the final day that you can receive a pre-match offer. Now, I will advise that pre-match offers aren't very common. So if you do not receive a pre-match offer, don't fret. You're still eligible to be a part of the TXHES match with all of the medical schools for those of you that are TXHES residents. And even after that, there is a rolling admissions period where there's a lot of movement between schools. Even right now for our entry year 2020 applicants, there are still some things that may be changing around in terms of admissions. So don't fret if you don't get admitted right away. The interviews we expect will continue on for medical and dental schools through February 19th. That is going to be the match preference submission deadline. This is about a month later from what it usually is. And then our match results will be released on March 5th, which again is a little over a month later than it typically is. And these are in response to COVID-19 and all of the impacts. So this allows the school some additional time to extend interviews to you, to review your application. So if you feel that there are different things that are stalling you from submitting your application, for example, not having an MCAT test date or not having your letters submitted quite yet, don't fret. This is why we've allotted this additional time. The schools are very cognizant of all of the impacts that you all are facing as applicants. In mid-March is when all of our veterinary schools typically extend offers of admission. And then April 30th is the deadline at which applicants can only hold one offer of admission. So if you have multiple offers, you have to whittle it down to the one offer on April 30th. And as of May 15th, that is the last date that the schools can actually extend offers of admission to anybody who is currently holding an offer at a different school. So if you have an offer to a school on May 15th, you will not hear from any other schools extending offers who are part of TMDSAS. So hopefully this puts a few of your concerns to rest. Again, this is a really weird year. Hey, we have a special guest joining us. It's Matthew Meeks, our executive director.
Yeah.
So, how's it going?
Good. It's good to be here.
Great. We're glad to have you just in time because we have quite a few questions that have come up.
Oh no, it's going to be stump the director afternoon. Here we go.
So here we go. We have our first question from Irfan. Hello, how are y'all doing? We're doing great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Due to the delays with the MCAT, I was wondering how the schools will handle the MCAT. For example, will the medical schools extend the secondaries and interviews and use the MCAT as something like the deciding factor of whether or not to be admitted? What does delaying the transmission of application mean? Does this mean the med schools will not send our secondaries until they're transmitted? No, actually, some of the, let's actually take a look at this together. We'll go ahead and open the website on our secondary applications because that will really show you how some of the schools are handling secondary applications. And most importantly, let me go ahead and share that. Most importantly, you see that some of the schools will actually extend an invite for you to interview there, while others will actually ask that you go ahead and start your application, your secondary application. So let's walk through those here on the TMDSAS website. This is an excellent question, something that we get often both at TMDSAS and at health, in our online communities that we answer as part of Texas Health Education Service. So here on the home page, we have medical, dental, and veterinary applicants can go through here, or if you prefer to go through plan, dental, we'll start with dental, and then it's next steps after submission. This takes you to a part of the website that you'll start looking at after you submit your application. So your question specifically has to do with secondary applications, so we'll click here. And we see that the Texas A&M University College of Dentistry is requiring a secondary application. Now back here for our medical applicants, next steps. And then let's see, completing secondary applications and Casper. Here we have a list of all of the TMDSES medical schools that require secondary applications, and it also shares how those applications are being submitted. So for example, Dell Medical School has an email that they send out to applicants after the review of their application. So that school may wait until the transmission of all of the applications before they start extending secondaries. Another example here is Texas A&M. You actually have to go ahead and start your secondary application immediately after submitting your application through TMDSES and having it transmitted to them. So depending on the school, some of them ask you to go ahead and start your secondary application, and others will actually send you an email that will indicate that you'll go ahead and go and start your secondary application with them. For veterinary schools, I forgot to mention them. We'll do the same direction here, plan, veterinary, and then it's next steps after application, submission, secondary applications, and here we have information for the Texas A&M College of Veterinary Medicine. So all of this is on the TMDSES website. Check out the links, visit the websites for the schools. And in our newsroom, we've also asked the schools to chime in on how the secondary applications may be affected by COVID-19. We do have a couple of responses from some of the schools in there. All right, so I believe there was a second part to that question that you'd asked. Let me open that up. What does delaying the transmission of application mean? Does this mean the med schools will not send our secondaries until they're transmitted? So I believe I answered the second part of that question, but I think I'd like to punt that first part of the question. What does it mean to delay transmission to Matthew, since he's here?
Yeah, so that's something that the schools proposed as a way to sort of, we know that many of our applicants won't be able to get into the MCAT in May, and so that was a way to just kind of sort of level the playing field a little bit and allow our applicants some time to get into a test date. And our understanding is that the late May dates are still, that the MCAT dates are moving forward, and so this is good news. And so hopefully it won't impact the cycle too much. So.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity to talk about some of those changes for the MCAT. From what we understand, the MCAT is now going to be shorter for you as the test taker. So what that means is that it may not necessarily mean that you have less time to answer the same amount of questions, but perhaps that you'll have fewer rounds of the same type of topics. And so I know that there have been a lot of discussions about, where can I get MCAT test prep that prepares me for the 5 and something hour test versus the 8.5 hour test. Don't fret too much on that. Ultimately, the content's the same. So educate yourselves. If you have a current vendor that you're using, you may want to bring that up with them to see how you might be able to focus more on the shorter version of the test. But I don't think overall it's going to be something that's going to be of a major concern. The last thing that the MCAT folks want to do is to pull a fast one on students who've already had their tests canceled several times. Yeah. We're ultimately all in this together, and we want to make sure that there's an equity of experience. And so it's in the best interest of the MCAT folks to make sure that the MCAT experience is equitable to those who were able to take the test prior to COVID-19 the cancellations that happened. So yeah, hopefully that helps ease some of those concerns that we have. We have another question. If some professors have delayed posting grades, what do you suggest? This is a great question. Delaying posting grades, I actually have not heard of that. Matthew, have you heard that on your end?
Yeah, I haven't heard it specifically. I know that it has come up in the past, and I think there's actually some advice on that in the handbook. If there are delays, to communicate with your applicant liaison, send us a message through the application system, and let us know what's going on, and we'll try to advise you specifically on your situation.
Thank you. All right, we have another question here. My biggest fear is that if I apply and submit my application, letters, and transcripts, don't submit your transcripts until TMDSCS asks for them. But yes, then take my MCAT and don't make the MCAT score cut. What happens then? So there's a lot to unwrap there. First off, you submit everything and you have a pending MCAT score. Perhaps you maybe were planning on retaking the MCAT. You have a score that isn't to your standards, and you submit your application. The schools do see all of the test scores that you have. So if you have an older DAT within a couple of years, and you're not really wanting to share that, that will be visible to the schools. Same thing with the MCAT. I believe the GRE as well. And so in the TMDSCS application, you actually list any planned test dates as well. So that shows the schools that you are not content with that score and that you're working on improving it. So don't fret about submitting early and not having a test score yet. The schools see that there's a test score coming and they'll know when to expect it. So when it comes in, it comes as part of an update from TMDSCS. Our Courage session with TMDSCS, Alana, and Nicole a couple of weeks ago actually walked us through how some of these updates work for TMDSCS in the schools. And so, just be ready for that and know that the schools are not going to disadvantage you for having a pending test score, especially this cycle because there have been so many impacts and delays. If your new test score isn't up to snuff to what you wanted it to be at, just know that the schools are using holistic review. They're not going to deny your application based off of one single factor like the MCAT or something else. They'll always look for an opportunity for you to show that you are academically capable, that your non-academic aspects of your application are up to snuff with the rest of the applicant pool. They'll always find or look for a way to balance that. And that's the whole purpose of holistic review. Perhaps your MCAT isn't where you want it to be because you wanted a 528 and it's a 510. That's actually pretty good and competitive in terms of what the rest of the applicant pool does and actually in terms of what the matriculant pool performs at. If you're curious about what these statistics look like, take a look at our statistics page on the TMDSCS website. And we actually have a graph that shows all of the MCAT scores laid out for applicants and matriculants and all of the GPAs. And so you're able to see that somebody that had a 4.0 GPA maybe didn't have a stellar MCAT score, but they still got in. And the same thing for DAT. We did the exact same layout for two sections of the DAT that tend to be looked at a little bit closer, and we did the same analysis. And so that shows you essentially what the range of MCAT scores are going to look like and what the GPA looks like in comparison. So again, the schools are not looking for the one gotcha moment. It's like, you didn't get the MCAT that you needed, so we're going to reject you on that basis. They have to have a very methodical process to go through that. Dr. Beck, do you have anything to share on maybe improving a test score the second time around?
Definitely do a lot of practice exams. So I think there's some data on that by some of the test prep companies, and maybe even TMDSCS has some that you need to take 8 to 10 practice exams. Don't just take the exams and go on to the next one. Go back over it and determine where your weak points are and then attack those points. Yeah. And that way you can raise your score, hopefully. And also, I think Enrique probably, I think one of those questions was about the transcripts. And there may be some reapplicants that are wondering why you're doing that this year. And maybe you could enlighten us on that.
Yeah, I'm actually going to shoot it over to Matthew.
Okay.
He muted his mic so he wouldn't have to answer.
Yeah, that's that. We're talking about the transcript, the submission of transcripts.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, this year we it was different. We've never required transcripts at the time of submission of the application, but this year we'll be requesting transcripts of applicants later into the fall and spring. And so that's new for this year. And I know that comes as a bit of a surprise to our applicants, but that is, the applicants will receive either an email or a message through the portal requesting transcripts, and at that time they'll begin submitting those, and we'll give plenty of time for applicants to be able to request those transcripts from their institutions, and then at that point we'll complete sort of the validation process, and also the institutions will require transcripts as well, and so you'll be sending them to TXHES, but then also to the institutions you've applied to.
Great, thanks.
I'm glad you joined us. We can throw the hard questions at you. So we had a follow-up question about the statistics. So I want to walk you all through how to get to those statistics here. And so here we have, again, the TMDCS homepage. And so if you go to plan, we actually have a few additional things for you to take a look at. For starting out, if you are somebody who's a prospective applicant who may not be sure where to even start with a TMDCS application, you're hearing things like MCAT and residency, and you have no clue what any of that is, click on that link and we'll get you on the right track. We have some resources that we publish as part of the Texas Health Education Service. You all are very familiar with them because you're on one right now, the current sessions. We also have podcasts, we have videos and other support mechanisms to help you make sense of all of these changes and overall put forward the best application that you can. For our current applicants, we have some additional resources here. We have a quick link to the application handbook. We have a quick link to the deadlines page and important dates, the course listings, some applicant responsibilities that show what it is that you need to be doing throughout the process. We have a page on residency on helping you determine or figure out how the determinations for residency are as part of the TMDCS application. And we have here statistics. And so as part of the statistics, we split these up between medical, dental, and veterinary applicants. For medical applicants, we click here and we see the GPA and MCAT matrix. And this is what I was talking about. Oh, this is actually incorrect. We'll fix that in a bit. But for our dental applicants, it's the same one, the MCAT, the DAT, and this is another one that's linked incorrectly. All right, I see what you're meaning. Just for the just to show you all what it looks like, we're going to go ahead and show you via the Texas Health Education Service page, and I'll make sure that those links are corrected in a bit. But here we have, it's the exact same issue. All right, I've got some work to do after this, but essentially what we're looking at is we're going to be looking at a page that looks like this, and it's going to have all of the MCAT scores on one side and the GPAs along the top, and it'll show you what those look like in comparison. I believe we might have these mixed up. Yes, this is exactly what I was looking for. We just have them mislabeled on here, but here we have the MCAT scores here on the left, and we have our GPAs along the top, and you see the frequency. It's a heat map, so it shows you how many applicants had a 4.0 and had these higher MCAT scores. And so you see that people were admitted with MCAT scores that could go pretty low by overall standards. I'm sorry, these are applicants. And then over here you see that nobody with 497 to 501, nobody was admitted with a MCAT score below a 497, which is the overall mean for all test takers. And then we have the exact same information available for dental. I apologize for those links being a little wonky, but we'll go back and fix those so you're able to access them. But that is some information that is available on our websites. And I think it's really helpful, especially for you who are thinking of applying in the future and are still trying to figure out, what your targets are going to be. You're maybe looking at the MSARs and trying to figure out what your target should be. This is definitely the place to check out some of that. And we make sure to provide statistics for every application cycle, and you'll see 10-year trends as well. So you can see what that looks like over time. All right, So speaking of MSAR, Dr. Beck, you were going through the MSAR yesterday and you wanted to make some notes for our applicants as well.
Right. The medical school admission requirements, that's part of the AAMC, the Association of American Medical Colleges website. And I don't know if some of you know about that website or not, but the medical school admission requirements has all of the allopathic listings of medical schools in the United States and Canada. And it gives a lot of statistical data in there. I believe they are allowing people to look at some part of that without a subscription, and the subscription's about, I think, $35 for a year's worth of information. But I did notice that some of the deadline dates for some of the Texas schools are incorrect. So I know that the Texas medical schools will be updating those. And do pay attention to the TMDSAS deadlines. Those are correct. So be aware that there may be a discrepancy in the MSAR. And it's still a good resource, but they have all of the medical schools in the United States. So I'm sure they're relying on the medical schools to make sure their information is updated and correct. So
yeah, I think the discrepancy you're referring to had to do with the application deadline, since
yes,
that recently changed.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So several of those have an earlier deadline, which wouldn't hurt anybody, but just to make sure that you know that there's some different dates on that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so it looks like we are caught up with all the questions that have come in so far into our chat here. But again, if you have any questions about anything of the process, especially right now that we have our executive director here, that we can toss all of your difficult questions
I'm
to.
the director. That's the name of the game right now.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for members of the team to get on there and start asking me questions.
Oh, surely they're creating.
I know they're watching. So.
Yeah, they're ready. Yeah. All right. So we have a new question that came up. May I ask, what is the official deadline? So we went through some of the deadlines right now in the timeline. The official deadline for medical and dental applicants is October 30th. For veterinary applicants, the application deadline set by the Texas A&M College of Veterinary Medicine is September 15th. And again, we do have the Texas Tech College of Veterinary Medicine joining us in the fall. We're not quite sure yet on what their deadline is going to be, but you definitely want to get your application in by the deadline in order to be considered for that school. Matthew, would you happen to have any updates on when we might expect that school to join?
The veterinary school?
Yes.
Yes, so the veterinary school, we're the anticipated date right now is sometime the end of August. And so there's quite a bit involved in that, but hopefully between the third week of August and the second week of September, we'll be welcoming the new Texas Tech Veterinary School.
Thank you.
And at that time, applicants will be notified and prompted to include the veterinary school as in their list of selected schools. So,
right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we have a new question that came in here in the chat. This may not be COVID related. That's fine. We're here to address all questions. I was wondering, how do the schools evaluate someone with a grad school GPA alongside undergraduate one in the overall statistics scheme? So that's a great question. The statistics that we provide on that page are overall GPAs. And so that will take into account every single course that you have taken since you graduated from high school and you started any higher education, all the way up through maybe even a grad program that you may have been a part of, a doctoral program. Any GPA will be considered in that. What TMDSAS does, and part of the reason why processing can take a while, is that they actually code all of your classes and make sure that all the classes that you coded in the application are correct. Yeah. Because the GPA is calculated in a number of ways. Mm-hmm. You have your undergraduate GPA, graduate GPA, post-bac GPA. You have BCPM GPA, which is your biology, chemistry, physics, and math courses. And then you have those split up again, undergrad BCPM, grad BCPM, non-science BCPA or non-science GPA, science GPA, and then you have all of those broken out by semester or by application year.
Yeah.
You have them split up by course type and how they fulfill the prerequisites. So, for example, all of your biology classes may be calculated into a new GPA. It's dizzying how many different ways your GPA is calculated. And
Yeah.
the reason why it's calculated in so many different ways is because it allows the schools to be able to take a quick glimpse into how your GPA has progressed over time. So for example, the GPAs that are split up based off of semesters will show the schools what your trend is. So if you came in and you maybe didn't start so well your freshman year, and then you slowly got better and better, and once you've gone through your senior year, you're totally nailing that genetics class, and your GPA is a 4.0, that shows that you are academically ready to handle the rigors of professional school.
Yeah.
But if you came in and you had, 4.0, 120 hours of dual credit classes, and you just didn't do very well once you started taking classes in college, and you're really leaning on that dual credit GPA to prop you up, the schools will be able to see that very quickly. And so that's part of the reason why the GPAs are split up in so many different ways. If you are concerned that you're perhaps in that first pool where you haven't done so well recently, and you're concerned about how the schools will look into that, that may be a topic of conversation that you might want to do on your optional essay. The optional essay on the TMDSS application is there for you to essentially speak directly to the admissions committee and say, hey, I want you to take a quick look at this part of the application, and here's what I have to say about that. So if you are concerned about your GPA perhaps over time, know that there's no way to hide that. The schools will know, particularly right away as soon as they receive your application. But if it's something you want to address, then the perfect place for that might be in the optional essay. All right, another question. Once we've received secondaries, when is best time to submit them? It'll be tough to juggle studying for the MCAT and filling out secondaries. This question has Dr. Beck written all over it. I'll let you answer that.
Well, both are important, definitely. The sooner that you can get your secondaries in, the better for you. So I would say carve out some time to work on your secondaries. They can be long and usually involve additional essays. Or being proactive, you could start some essays now and maybe adapt them to the questions that are on the secondaries. So it's hard to study for 8 or 10 hours a day anyway, I think, and keep your brain alive. So just a diversion may be working on your secondaries. And those are generally a little bit different. There can be some repetition between the primary application and the secondary. But again, it's an opportunity for you to reveal additional information about your character and your personality.
Thank you. And, talk about reconnecting with your overall mission, talking about it in the secondary applications while you are, hitting the grindstone with MCAT prep or test prep. Mm-hmm. That's a powerful way to get you realigned to your goal.
That's a good point.
Yeah. All right. What is the difference between Taiwanese versus Taiwanese/Chinese? If others cannot be traced back to country of origin because it is unknown, is that going to be a disadvantage? That's a great question. This is part of the application where we're asking for biographical information. The way that those questions are phrased are based off of how the Texas THECB. Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board regulates those, and those are often based off of federal guidelines. And so we have no control over how that is collected. I would suggest that you make the best judgment call on your end and just know that it's not going to adversely impact you. No, I mean, the schools obviously are taking ethnicity and race into consideration, but it's not going to be the end all be all. So if you are not able to trace back your origin as the options are listed in the application, just do the best that you can and know that your application is going to speak for you. All right. What is the earliest shadowing and clinical experience and I can put down in my application? I did some in senior year of high school, and I was planning to do more right now, but because of COVID, I'm unable to do so. Dr. Beck?
Yeah, well, for the vet students, pre-vets, you can include high school information on your application, but that's not true for the pre-meds and pre-dents. You have to start right after graduation from high school. So and I'm assuming from your question that you don't have any experience between that time, maybe. So then it can be difficult, especially for pre-dental students, because you need a letter from a dentist. Mm-hmm. That's a requirement by the dental schools. So that can put you in a difficult position if you don't have that. I told my students there are ways to relay that information to the medical schools or dental or vet. You haven't said which you are, but like including in your personal essay something that happened during your shadowing experience that may have inspired you to be a doctor, a dentist, or a vet. Well, the vet you can include, but doctor or dentist. And so there would still be a way for you to get that information across, that you didn't just wake up this morning and decide you wanted to be a doctor.
Right.
That maybe you had an internship in high school and in a magnet high school or something like that. Even though you're not allowed to put that in the activities section or internships or something like that. That's why the essays are so wonderful, that you can reveal information in that you want people to know about you. And there's not really any restrictions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, so we are pulling a question from in our newsroom for COVID-19. We've included a form that you can fill out, and we go through those questions, but we're unable to answer each one of them. But what we do is we go through those and see if there are any trends on what the deans might be able to, the deans of admission for our participating schools might be able to address as a whole. And so those have really helped us with addressing your questions. But we do have some in there that, we're not able to answer right away, but we do want to use this time as well to address some of those questions. And one of which I think is really relevant for this time. It is, where should students applying through TMDSAS address COVID-19 impacts on their lives or applications? The optional TMDSAS essay, or will the question be added to a secondary application? I think this is going to be a tag team one that the three of us will have to tackle. This has definitely been a topic of conversation during our advisory committee meetings.
Yeah.
So perhaps we should start with you, Matthew.
Well, some of our schools have added a question to the secondaries. They haven't all done that, but I think the message is, to include those experiences in your essays. I mean, this is it is more recent activity. It's more things. This has impacted the applicants most recent, but we sort of encourage them to just include it in the other the other essays in their application, particularly the I just accidentally muted myself, but also including it in the optional essay.
Mm-hmm.
But our understanding is that several of the schools have added a question on the secondary related to the COVID-19 impact.
Yeah. But not all of the schools have a secondary application. And so those schools did indicate that the optional essay might be an opportunity to discuss those, or perhaps even some additional discussion in their primary essays that they're writing on their application.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that was brought up is, unfortunately, COVID-19 has impacted us all. And so if you are sharing what impacts you've experienced as part of COVID-19, you should definitely exercise, and I'm going to punt this one over to Deb, to show, don't tell in your application what the mean in terms of impacts. Deb, could you walk us through kind of that concept that in terms of discussing experiences? And I think COVID-19 is a great learning experience for a lot of applicants in terms of there are things that impact us, but overall you want to discuss what you've taken away from that.
Right. And in this, I think, okay, number one, remember that everybody's going through it at the same time and may have experienced some of the same things that you have, the delayed MCAT, the delayed DAT, so different things like that. I don't think I would write about that because almost everybody's seeing that. But certainly maybe how your plans have changed for your volunteer experiences and how maybe you've amended those to tutor your neighbor kids via Zoom, or because they're being homeschooled right now and their parents are going crazy and don't know how to teach them, and you've been a tutor for kids before, or maybe you were a nanny before and about little kids and some of those developmental milestones that would make you very knowledgeable. And so pull out some different things. Maybe you were giving someone music lessons or playing music for people in the nursing home. Maybe you were out on the lawn singing hymns or singing popular music or something to your neighbors. But there are different ways to serve humanity, and you shouldn't let a little virus keep you from doing that. So,
right.
Good.
Yeah. And I think along the lines of tutoring, I mean, we all typically live within range of a high school.
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody's kept up, but we are concerned about MCATs and DATs being postponed. AP tests were not postponed. Yep. And these students have missed out on more than half semester. So reach out to maybe your local high school biology professor or anatomy professor, statistics professor. You all are taking college level courses and might be able to be of assistance. And a lot of these students may actually be, just a few years behind where you are in terms of going to professional school. So I think the bigger picture here is we're all being impacted in one way or another. It's how you are reacting and what picture that paints in terms of you as a future community leader and a future healthcare professional.
That's good.
All right. Follow-up question back to our chat. We have, what is the deadline for medical schools outside of Texas, if we all know? Ooh, that's a juicy one.
What is the deadline for medical schools outside of Texas?
Correct.
Oh, look on the MSAR.
Yeah.
It's just, you can Google it, AAMC and MSAR, the medical school admission requirements. That's for allopathic. And for osteopathic, they have a whole chart on the aacom.org website. But they're listed. You can find them.
Yeah. And the same thing for dental applicants. The ATSAS has similar resources, as does the MCAS for veterinary applicants outside of Texas. All right. Lots of thank yous. Thank you all. I'm glad this is helpful to you. What if you don't have any clinical rotation experience, but have been working in a hospital with patients for some time? Will that work? So I think this is a very common question that we get. In the TMDCS application, particularly, you're asked to label your experiences within a certain activity. And so the guidance from TMDCS is that you enter activities only in one section. This is especially true for veterinary applicants. For medical and dental applicants, if your experience is both an employment and a healthcare experience, you're able to enter it in both sections. But for the most part, strictly for the rest of them, everything should be in only one section. If you have any experience that is direct observation of a physician with a patient, that would be considered healthcare experience. If you are in a hospital setting and you are, helping with different tasks that they assign you, that may be a volunteer experience, and you would enter it in the volunteer experience section, but you shouldn't undersell it. But just know that healthcare experience is defined as a direct observation experience. And so in terms of a clinical rotation, that would be a direct observation. So that would be a healthcare experience. Working in a hospital with patients for some time could cover so many different things. And some of them may be considered volunteer, perhaps as Deb was saying, you play music at a nursing home. Whereas others might be, you are translating for a healthcare provider, in which case that would be a direct observation, and that would be considered a healthcare experience. So the defining indicator there is going to be that direct observation. Were you in the room while a healthcare provider was providing healthcare to a patient? If so, it's a healthcare experience. If not, it may be a volunteer experience, maybe extracurricular. And again, just use your best judgment on that. Don't dwell too much on whether you put it in the right section. The importance is that you're putting it in the application. Too many times, I've seen a lot of brain power wasted on, figuring out just the right section to put your experiences into. Use your best judgment, put it in the application, and move forward. And use that brain power to communicate what it is that you need to communicate in your application. Use the essays portions more effectively. But in terms of defining which specific category your activity may have been on, just use your best judgment. If I did a lot of volunteering in my last 2 years of high school, which was on a college campus, and I earned 76 hours of college credit, can I include that in my application? Ooh,
So that was college credit.
It sounds like it's a dual credit scenario, and they did volunteering during the last 2 years of high school, at which point they were also technically doing college coursework.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they hadn't graduated high school yet, right?
Correct.
So I think probably not.
Yeah, I would use the graduation from high school as the marker from to start including activities. It's great that you have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And as Deb mentioned earlier, if it's something that was really meaningful, you might want to include or reference it in one of your essays or other parts of the application. But yeah, the guidelines from the schools is from the point of graduation from high school. If you are a veterinary applicant, you can include high school experiences, but I'm going to have to make the assumption that this applicant may not be. All right. More thank yous. Thank you. For the employment and clinical sections, how do we go about writing the description and the distribution of hours? Tricky. You do have to enter how many hours you did in a specific week, how many hours you committed per week, and you have to enter how many cumulative hours you did. I would use your best judgment, again, in your activity section. Don't overthink it, but you also want to make sure that you don't over calculate the amount of time that you committed to that activity. Yeah. It's very easy for the schools to see when you have, 800 hours in one activity and another 800 hours in another activity. And then when you do the math, there's like no time for you to have actually slept while also taking 18 hours of college credit. Yeah. It's easy for them to see that. Just use your best judgment. For the most part, when I see issues with this, it tends to be that there's a long break in those activities. Have you experienced that, Deb? Somebody who did Habitat for Humanity every July while they were in college, and they committed the entire month of July, and they want to add it as their experiences. In an event like that, I think it might be best to include it as 4 separate experiences.
Yeah, I think so too.
So that you say, from June 30th through August 1st, I was in Habitat for Humanity. And we did this, even if the descriptions are very similar in what you ended up doing. It might be easier for you to separate it out rather than to overcalculate the amount of time that you actually committed to that activity. I hope that helped answer that question. I know this is a very common concern. The key takeaway here is make sure that you're not overstating how many hours you actually committed to that activity. Because that's something that the schools are very sensitive to, and they will call you out if you are invited to an interview, and they'll say, hey, so how did you do all of this while also doing this? And you do not want your limited interview time to be you defending how you entered that. So just use your best judgment and use your common sense. All right. For my shadowing, do I have to include the doctor's name? I did shadowing on a medical trip overseas, and process included observing multiple doctors. You should definitely include the doctor's name.
Yeah.
It's a small world after all. And I think a lot of times the schools do appreciate seeing that you remember the name of the doctor and what you experienced. And I think it's overall just like an additional check, if I may, on whether you actually did that experience. But yeah, you should definitely include the name of the doctor. I know there aren't too many characters that you're allotted in the descriptions, but do include the name of the doctors that you shadowed. If there are multiple doctors, again, you may want to split those up into different activities, especially if they were part of different specialties. How many hours of volunteer work are they really looking for? Great question. There is no magic number.
No.
Yeah. And the same could be said about how many hours of healthcare experience or how many hours of employment. There isn't a magic number. And when we have looked into numbers like that, they're all over the place. We saw some that were very, very low and some that were just unattainably high, is what I'm going to say. And so there isn't a magic number on getting you in. I think ultimately the schools want to see that you have engaged in that activity and that you have taken away an experience that will reinforce your desire to pursue this career.
Yeah.
Whatever that takes, so be it.
I do think for the vets, Texas A&M vet school, they want to see a lot of hours, 700, 800 hours.
Yes.
That you have contact with a veterinarian.
Right. I'm not sure if it's that high. Let me verify that. But okay. Yes, they do have a number that they're looking for. Thank you, Deb. All right, so we are caught up with our chat questions. Again, we're here. Oh, it's 2 o'clock, right on the dot, but we're gonna take one more question here because this was a really good one. Let's see if we can find it. And this is one final topic that we wanted to discuss was the policy on pass-fail courses. Matthew, if you could walk us through pass-fail, and then Deb, if you could offer your insights. Is it advisable to choose pass-fail or satisfactory, unsatisfactory for classes recommended for medical school, meaning the prerequisite courses? And at this point, let's say for the summer semester and beyond. So first, Matthew, would you walk us through that policy?
Yeah, sure. And I'll just back up to the spring semester. So for the spring term, as we published in the newsroom that we take the pass-fail or credit, no credit courses. And there's no preference for a graded option, but for the summer term, we're still taking those courses, but some of our institutions do have a preference for a graded option if available. And we're, Enrique, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're going to add, as we sort of receive those preferences from the institution, from our institutions, we'll include those in the newsroom under the individual responses.
Correct. And I think for the most part, most of the schools do prefer for the summer semester moving forward, if the graded option is available, to move forward with getting a graded option.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah, I think if you have that option, always take the graded option if you have it.
Yeah, and the exception for that, of course, is the spring 2020 semester.
Right.
Since that was the semester that was most affected by interruptions by COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
You had
and people were going to online courses, and it was a little chaotic.
A little. All right, so I'm still on the Texas A&M website looking for that magic number for our veterinary applicants, and I found it. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen here. All right. So this is the Texas A&M College of Veterinary Medicine website. And I found it via the TMDSAS website. I was able to pull that up with the the participating school section. And here they have several really helpful links on what their selection process is like, part of which has to do with veterinary experience. And they define that as hours spent working under the direct supervision of a veterinarian, whether in clinical research environment, paid or volunteer. Applicants must have 100 hours worth of veterinary experience in order to qualify for an interview. So somebody was asking for magic number. That's the magic number for veterinary applicants to Texas A&M. We don't yet have feedback on whether the Texas Tech College of Veterinary Medicine will include a similar number. And as soon as we find out, we will be sharing that information as well. All right, we did it. So another courage session, I think, is really successful here. Again, Matthew, thank you so much for stopping by. We know you're busy putting out a ton of fires everywhere, making sure the wheels keep on turning. So we really appreciate the time that you helped us out with this today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to mention one thing, Enrique. I know that as applicants are submitting their application, they'll receive an email, post-submission email. And in that email, there's a link for a survey. So I want to encourage our applicants to complete the survey. That's how we improve the application and all of our resources and services that we provide our applicants and in-member institutions. So I just want to encourage you to do that. And then just a word that I wish you all the best, and just want to encourage you all to stay resilient as you navigate this application cycle with all of its complexities. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And Deb, as always, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Didn't you have a quote?
I did have a quote. We want to end up on a positive note here. And then I know this is a weird, tumultuous time. We've referred to that several times. And I'm not quite sure who to attribute it to, but I've definitely seen it attributed to several folks. But either way, the words are really powerful, I believe. We cannot change the direction of the wind, but we can adjust the sails. And, really, this is the time to really prove to yourself how committed you are to this goal. Don't see this as an opportunity to step back or slow down. This is an opportunity for you to really show what you're made of. We've shared a lot of ways that the schools are really going above and beyond to make sure that the process is equitable for all applicants. And I think it's important for you all to know that as current and future applicants, that the schools are expecting you to be able to make adjustments on your end as well. We've shared some examples on how you can do that on your end. And ultimately what you want to show is that you are still steadfast in wanting to pursue this career. If you have any questions about that, we're happy to address them in our online communities, the TMDCS Hub or the TMDCS Non-Traditional Students groups. We're very active on there, and you all are active on there as well. We really appreciate your feedback. Again, as Matthew said, your feedback is really what makes us great. And we do take it to heart. You saw some of the questions that we've addressed. We really appreciate all of the input that you share with us and hope that the services that we provide are helping you stay on track. And so on behalf of everybody at the Texas Health Education Service and at TMDCS, we wish everybody all the best of luck. And we're here if you need us. And we'll see you next week for another Courage session. Take care.
Thank you.